right there on Commercial Street. Over here on my left, just past our Irish restaurant, this is Rira. If you're looking for Irish food, you're going to want to go to Rira. And just past Rira, we have our Casco Bay lines. This is our ferry service. Casco Bay lines, those white boats with black, with the yellow stripe and the black bumpers there, those are our ferries. They go out to Casco Bay and service 8 islands out there. Our most popular and populous island is Peaks Island. It's a quick 15-minute ferry ride. It's a really exciting place to check out. There's fine dining and ice cream and all sorts of stuff to do out there. Here on my left is our Main State Pier. So if we have more than one cruise ship in at a time, the other one would be docked here at the Main State Pier. But today we only have one ship in town, so we have our little fleet of tugboats here at the Main State Pier. Those little tugboats are really cute. They look like little toy boats, but they're very powerful boats. Very strong, hard-working boats that go out into the harbor, and they help bring those big ships into our waters. And look, one of those big ships right here, this cruise ship that's in today, some of you are from. This one right here is docked at the Ocean Gateway Terminal. And the Ocean Gateway Terminal was built about 10-15 years ago, and it does allow us to host 2 cruise ships at once, which is a huge boost to our economy. These cruise ships come all through April through November, and they bring a lot of people here, a lot of visitors, and a lot of people to eat and drink at our restaurants and shop at our downtown stores. So we really love when these ships are in. And we're going to make a corner here, and as we do, you'll be able to see our main narrow gauge railroad. This is a sightseeing tour that goes up along the east end. In December, they actually do a Polar Express there where the kids will come in their pajamas and they'll get on that train. They'll go up to the east end to meet Santa Claus. Cute. Now we are headed out to the east end ourselves. It's a little too early for Santa Claus. He's not here today. But we have a lot of things to talk about up on the east end. As we make this corner here, looking out to my right, you're going to see the Residence Inn by Marriott, and in front of that hotel there's a big rock on the patio. You'll see it when we make this corner here. And that rock has a plaque on the front of it. Not to note that this is the location where Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was born. His aunt's house stood here on the corner of 4th Street and Hancock Street. It was one of the original homes built here in Portland. He was born there, and he grew up in Portland in a different house that's still standing. We're going to see that a little bit later on the tour. Do we have any beer drinkers here? So we have Shipyard Brewing right there. That's the 2nd largest brewery in Maine. They're actually building a hotel around that brewery. They're calling it a brewtown. Rumor on the street is that when they're finished with it, there's going to be a beer tap in every room. Now, I don't work for Shipyard. I can't say if that's true or not, but it might be worth coming back to check out when they're finished building that hotel. We're going to climb up this hill here. Once we get past the edge of the cruise ship, you'll start to get your first views out on Casco Bay. There's the end of it. So we're going to see the first views of our beautiful Casco Bay out here. We are climbing up Munjoy Hill, named after the Munjoy family, who owned this entire area in the 1700s. At the time, this whole hill was farmland, and the residents of Portland could pay the Munjoy family a small fee to let their cattle come up here and graze all along Munjoy Hill. As you can see, there's no more farmland left up here, and it's now home to some of Portland's prime real estate. When we get to the top, we are going to pull over for just a moment, and when we do, you're more than welcome to unbuckle, stand up, take pictures. We're going to talk about what we can see out in Casco Bay and a little bit about this Munjoy Hill neighborhood. So again, feel free to unbuckle once we stop, and we'll just buckle back up before we go again. We're pulling into Portland's Fort Allen Park. Fort Allen Park has been here since the 1890s, and if you take a look at my screen, you'll see a picture on a postcard of what it looked like in the 1890s. It looks pretty much the same. The cars are a little bit different, the boats are a little bit different, but we still have our gazebo down there. The Fort Allen Park is the home to this ship mast sitting here looking over the water. That mast used to belong to the USS Portland, which was part of the Pacific Fleet in World War II. It was a highly decorated ship, and it saw a lot of action in that war. And now the mast sits here overlooking Casco Bay. So if you look across the water, it looks like you're looking at one big piece of land. But what you're actually looking at is a group of islands. And if you look at my screen, you'll see a map of some of them. There's over 40 islands out in Casco Bay, many of which are uninhabited. You can see Peaks Island over there that we talked about down on Commercial Street with all the houses along the shore. That's Peaks Island out there. And here's a map of some of the other ones that are out in Casco Bay. Now I'm sure you have noticed this big stone structure sitting out in the water over there. That is Fort Gorges. And it was named after Sir Ferdinando Gorges, who was one of the original colonial proprietors of Portland, Maine. And it is a military fort. It was commissioned after the War of 1812. And so if you know much about the War of 1812, it's when the British almost won us back. And Portland decided they needed some defense out there in the water, so they commissioned Fort Gorges to be built. But they didn't actually get any money to build the fort until about 45 years later. So they started work on Fort Gorges. A couple of years after that, the Civil War broke out, and they really ramped up production of that fort, but they were not able to get it completed until a couple of years after the war ended. Now at that time, advancements in military technology rendered that fort pretty much obsolete immediately. The cannons that are out there, they fired them off one time, and then that fort went into retirement. Now, it's said that when they fired off those cannons, it actually shattered all the windows in the fort. So it's probably a good thing that Fort Gorges didn't see any action out there in the war. Looking directly across the water, you'll see an island, and in the right-hand side, you're going to see another fort nestled in there, that stone building right there. That's Fort Scammell. And Fort Scammell sits on House Island. Now, House Island used to be known by a different name. It was called Little Ellis Island, because if Ellis Island was experiencing quarantines or backups, they would reroute those ships here to Casco Bay. Excuse me. There was a big immigration center out there on House Island. There's still some remnants of the buildings that were out there at one time, and the doctor's house is actually still sitting out there on House Island. So when people would come here to Little Ellis Island, they would come ashore and they would meet that Grand Trunk Railroad that used to run along Commercial Street, and they could continue on their journey to either either Boston or New York. But some of them came here not knowing anybody. So when they got off the boat in Portland, Maine, they took a look around. They decided to settle right here. And we still have a thriving Irish population here and Italian population here because of all the people that came to us through Little Ellis Island. And when they decided to settle here in Portland, a lot of them settled right here in this neighborhood out to my right, this Munjoy Hill neighborhood. So again, this is some of Portland's prime real estate today. But it was not always like that. When people were coming here through Little Ellis Island, this entire area was really run down. It was a very rough outpost. It was filled with tenement buildings. It was not a place that you wanted to be. Even about 20 years ago when I moved to town, we all knew you don't come and hang out up on Munjoy Hill. The only people that I knew that lived up here were just broke college kids. Now, I can't say for sure, but I don't think there's a lot of broke college kids living in these gorgeous old ship captains' homes anymore. You can see this whole area has been completely revitalized, and it is now home to some of our most popular and our most expensive real estate.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like how much?
So a lot of these homes are divided into condos, so each floor is a separate unit, and some of them will go for $500,000 for just one.
Wow. That's expensive.
Yes.
How much?
Some of them go for
$2,000.
$500,000. Just one floor. One of our most famous immigrants to come here through Little Ellis Island is a man named Sean Feeney. Now, if you're not from Portland, Maine, you probably don't know who Sean Feeney is, but you might know who John Ford is. He was a famous Hollywood director, and he directed a lot of John Wayne's movies, and they're actually the same person. So Sean Feeney's family came here through Little Ellis Island, and they settled right here in the Munjoy Hill neighborhood where he was born. He grew up here in Portland. I mean, when he grew up, he decided he wanted to make movies for a living. So he went out to California to do that, and he was quickly told that there was no work for the Irish. They wouldn't hire him because his name was Sean Feeney. So he changed his name to the more American-sounding John Ford, and the rest is history. He became a very successful Hollywood director. But he grew up right here in Munjoy Hill neighborhood by the name of Sean Feeney. So we can see 3 lighthouses from our vantage point here today. It looks like there's a big sailboat out in the water too. So if we start at the mainland and go all the way out to the left down that rock jetty as far as you can go out into the water, you'll see Spring Point Ledge Lighthouse sitting out there. Spring Point Ledge Lighthouse sits on the campus of Southern Maine Community College, which is just around the coast from us in South Portland. And you can walk all the way up to that lighthouse. You can walk right up and touch it. It's a windy walk, it's a wet walk, but it's definitely worth it when you get out to the end there. The views of Casco Bay are just spectacular. Now, how many of you have seen this picture before? This is a pretty iconic picture. If you Google Portland, Maine and hit images, this is what you're going to come up with. This is our very own Portland Headlight. It was commissioned in 1791 by George Washington. It sits over in Cape Elizabeth in a state park and is the most photographed lighthouse in all of North America. So that's why you've probably seen it before. And we can see it from here today. If you look directly across at the mainland, you're going to see a parking lot in the foreground there. And above that parking lot, you're going to see some big brick buildings at the top of the hill there. And in between those two brick houses, the tallest structure that's not a tree, there it goes, it's going to flash every 3 seconds. So you'll see that flash of the lighthouse. There it is. So that is Portland Headlight. And you can go out to that lighthouse as well. This house that was originally built in 1791 still stands out there. And the third lighthouse that we can see, if you look to the right-hand side of the water, you're going to see a green buoy sitting out there. And to the right of that green buoy, there's another lighthouse. That is Portland Breakwater Light. And we don't call it Portland Breakwater Light. We actually call it Bug Light. And it got that nickname because it is cute as a bug. You can see it's a lot smaller than the other two lighthouses. It's really adorable. You can go out to that lighthouse as well. It sits in Bug Light Park, which is just over the bridge from us in South Portland. All right, we are going to buckle back up. And we're going to continue on. Okay, careful. We're going to continue along to the Eastern Promenade Park, or the Eastern Prom as we